Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a flamin' hot review today coming at you. Seriously, this review is gonna be fire! Alright, I got the puns out of the way. Flamekeeper is yet another action roguelite releasing into Steam Early Access, where you play as an adorable little piece of burning hot coal on a quest to stop shadow creatures and restore light to a world shrouded in darkness. For this Early Access release, players will be able to access 2 biomes, which will give you roughly 6 to 10 hours of gameplay, with the plan being to exit Early Access in about a year's time. With the final release, players can expect more biomes to explore, enemies, new items, and even a co-op, which I think will be a wonderful addition. That was something on the back of my mind while I was playing Flamekeeper, so good to see the developers will be adding that feature, and many more. So then, the question with any early access game, is it worth jumping into right now? Well, before I give my thoughts on that, let's talk a bit about the core gameplay loop. The goal of the game is to light a massive campfire, usually located in the central location of a map. You do this by pouring your own flame energy into the fire, and also by collecting lamps that will power the flames further. These lamps are scattered all over the place, and you'll need to take down enemies while collecting energy to stay alive. You'll also eat shrooms for perks like regenerating health, and ultimately retrieve the lamps and bring them to the fire without burning out. As you're trying to do all of this, enemies will be spawning at an endless rate, so you can expect them to tail you and pretty much do whatever it takes to hinder your progress. I guess you could say they are annoying little buggers. They are literally bugs, in the first biome anyways. You can of course jump, you can do a standard attack, and one handy feature is the ability to zoom out the map, which does help to give a good view of things so that you can have an idea of which direction you should head in to collect a lamp. Outside of lamps, there are also red artifact keys that can be inserted into a tower. These are pretty crucial to your success, as within these towers lies many of the resources that you'll need to upgrade your skills and your town hub world. More on that in a moment. Be sure to keep an eye on your stamina as well, as running low on that can leave you open to more attacks. There are also scrolls to be found which flesh out the combat a bit by adding abilities like being able to push enemies away, but ultimately the combat is pretty bare bones. I mean, you are a flame, you have no bones. It's simple, but serves the purpose. One other little thing of note is that there's these cute little villagers walking around from time to time, and they'll grab some of the flames. At first I thought they were thieves, but it turns out they're storing the flames and then putting them out in boxes for you to collect more health later. After you've completed a few areas, you'll find yourself in a tower defense section. That kind of came out of nowhere. Here, enemies will come towards the center of the map, which you'll need to protect. They come from different angles, but thankfully you can set traps in order to slow them down and thwart their progress. I'm not the biggest tower defense guy, but I'll admit, these sections were kind of fun. Was it frustrating to lose one and have to return all the way back to the beginning of a biome? It sure was, but that's kind of the nature of the genre. You love it or hate it for that. I'm kind of, I deal with it. It's part of gaming now. It's a big part of indie gaming. I've kind of gotten used to it. Still never get over the fact that I get tired of the same areas over and over again. It's also worth mentioning that at the end of the first biome, I did get to a boss encounter. It was pretty standard fare, typical pattern, dodge out of the way, hit the boss kind of thing, but it wasn't that bad. I can also appreciate that the second biome did try to switch things up a decent amount. So for example, now there was a sandstorm going on and you would need to kind of carefully walk across a bridge when platforms would raise and have those block the sandstorm so that you don't take damage. But ultimately, it did still feel like I was doing the same thing. Collect the lamps, bring them to the center, light the fire, do the tower defense, and then fight the boss. Alright, so I touched on that main town area a little bit earlier, or the village, or whatever you want to call it, but this is where you can upgrade skills to make your character stronger, as well as other perks which will give you an advantage for the next run. And that's basically how Flamekeeper plays out. I didn't find the game incredibly difficult myself, with most of my deaths coming from just not paying enough attention to my health, and that's perhaps the most interesting aspect of Flamekeeper, the element of strategy involved in completing maps. But visually, I think the game looks pretty charming. Again, as is the case with this genre, I did grow tired of seeing the same areas, but it's a cute 3D look, though enemies are a bit blah. The environments look nice enough, the lighting's pretty good, particularly with the flame effects, as you might expect, and performance was nice for an early access release. I hit the occasional random frame rate spike, but for the most part the game ran well over 100 frames per second pretty easily and felt smooth. On Steam Deck, the game also performed fairly well. You'll take a bit of a graphical hit and the load screens don't seem programmed. They're kind of weird looking, but it was perfectly playable. As for the music, it's a bit quirky and silly with bouncy melodies, but fairly unremarkable. It goes well enough with the game, but it's certainly not anything I'd be listening to outside of the game. There's plenty of staccato strings and playful tunes, but nothing all that exciting that you haven't heard in other games before. Same could be said for the sound effects, which again served the purpose, but didn't do all that much to stand out to me, at least not yet. As of now, Flamekeeper is showing a good deal of promise for an early access title. The gameplay loop is addicting enough, the visuals are nice, this, and I see a lot of potential to expand upon the game. I love the idea of implementing co-op, but as of now, is it worth jumping into early access? Well, that's always a tough question to answer. On one hand, it's a cool project, and supporting it is definitely awesome of you, but on the other, it's really not all the way there yet, and with only 2 biomes currently available, you will run out of content fairly quickly. At the least, I'd say keep your eye on this one and add it to your wish list if you are a fan of the genre.